if I'm to give a bit of background to the subject of data protection, this has been under discussion for many, many years. And we all provide our information to a variety of sources. Our personal information is provided to government agencies, our passport officers, our identity card officers. When we want to get them to process our information to produce an output like a passport or a national identity card. And then we have our information being provided quite freely when we open up our accounts with Apple or Android or Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp or whatever, right? So in that context, what is becoming a moot point of discussion in the contemporary digital space is the need to protect our information and to have a governing framework that would define how the information we give is protected and is processed by those who collect data. So what happened was that over the years, efforts were taken to formulate a data protection bill, and this gained momentum during the early part of 2019. And the drafting committee that was established to formulate the data protection bill did actually undertake a series of efforts. We evaluated our various processes, and then it was decided to formulate a set of principles that would get hardened into a set of laws. And the data protection bill was first formulated in mid-2019, and we had close to 7 to 8 public consultations. The point I want to make here is that Article 14A that sets the foundation for right to information in our Constitution also contains a privacy exemption, which is manifested in Section 5 of the Right to Information Act. And there have been many discussions as to how this will be reflected in the context of a law that will govern the broad privacy rights. But I must say, privacy per se is a broad set of principles, but data protection is a subset of that. So what we have done here is to include a series of rights. Personal data has been defined in the proposed data protection bill to mean any information that can identify a data subject directly or indirectly by reference to an identifier such as a name, an identification number, location data, or online identifier, or one or more factors specific to physical, psychological, genetics, economic, cultural, social identity of that individual or natural person. So what we have done here, what has been done through the drafting process is to impose several obligations through this law on those who collect and process personal data, who are deemed to be controllers and processors within the meaning of this draft bill. So controllers are those who collect data of all of us. So it can be a private sector entity or even a public authority. And interestingly, the definition of public authority in the data protection bill captures the same definition embodied in the right to information law. And a whole new set of rights have been given, which are referred to as rights of data subjects in the data protection bill. And a data protection authority will have to be established for the proper governance of this law. This bill would be applicable to those who process personal data, where processing of personal data takes place wholly or partly in Sri Lanka, where the processing of personal data is carried out by a controller or processor who is in the country, is incorporated body in Sri Lanka, or offers goods or services to data subjects in Sri Lanka, including specifically targeting of individuals who Facebook, Google, Apple, and all these entities, including Yahoo, WhatsApp, all these entities will be covered under this law. The moot point I want to emphasize here is that we need to, this law, I would say, supplements the Right to Information Act, because it the Right to Information Act in a way is recognized under the data protection law as a means for lawful processing. So for example, if I am to illustrate, the data protection bill has got a framework that articulates what constitutes lawful processing within the meaning of the data protection framework. And there are conditions that needs to be imposed as specified in Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. And if you look at Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, you will see it mirrors a scenario where processing is necessary for the performance of a task carried out in the public interest or in the exercise of official authority vested in the controller by any written law. So a public authority or which is a controller that collects data, our personal data, can process that information within the framework of the Right to Information law. If it has to provide that information, it needs to be mindful of the concept of proportionality and the need to share that information in the context of the public interest override. For example, a public authority will have the ability to use the data protection bill and its remit to clearly define a framework to release personal information along with other information in the act of exercising powers under the Right to Information Act. So I would conclude by saying that the rights that are given through the Right to Information Act is supplemented through the provision of the data protection proposed bill. I would urge all of the stakeholders here to look at the data protection bill in that context. And if larger public interests warrant disclosure, then it would be deemed to be lawful processing within the meaning of Schedule 1 and 2 of the data protection bill to provide such information relating to personal data that is required, provided a proper balance is struck with regard to proportionality and necessity. So the conclusion here is that once the data protection bill is in place, data protection officers will have to be appointed to certain classes of categories of institutions. Those entities, those data protection authorities will have to work together with information officers under the Right to Information Act to ensure proper balanced application of both laws. Both laws are supplementary with each other and does not oust one another. That is the conclusion I would like to state. And I apologize if I was not very clear due to the disturbances from one of the speakers on this channel. Thank you very much.